Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. I'm excited to be hopping today to celebrate Crescent Creations' new release of digital card kits. Now, their first kit ever is their superhero digital card kit, and I'm going to open it up and share with you all of the amazing little goodies that you get inside of this kit. We have the Father's Day clay bits, which have different sports balls in there. And then we also have these rhinestones with gold sequins and these super fun shiny star sequins. There are some laser printed images of different kind of shields and banners. And we also have laser printed sentiments and then some printed paper that are very superhero and comic book themed. Here is a look at the digital stamps that you receive with this kit. We have lots of great Mother's and Father's Day sentiments, and then we have some paper in the kit. We have some vellum. This metallic cardstock, it's super sturdy. It's a wonderful cardstock. And then we have 4 different color cardstocks. Now I decided to use this pattern paper as my inspiration for my colors. So if you want to take a quick screenshot there, those are the Spectrum Noir colors that I used for all of my images today. So I did color in my dad is my superhero, and then one of the shields, and then mom is the, so I'm going to have a Mother's Day and a Father's Day card for these first 2. So they're going to be very similar. I'm going to make them at the same time. I'm just pulling some rectangle dies from my stash. I'm die cutting the colored cardstock to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then the pattern printed paper will be 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to layer these together onto a top folding A2 size card base. This is just out of some heavy cardstock from my stash, and I'm placing that solid cardstock onto the front of each of these card bases. So I have one that will be green and blue with this printed paper, and the other one will be red and yellow. So my green and blue is going to be my Father's Day card, which is why I colored my sentiment in with my green markers. And then my red and yellow will be my Mother's Day card, which I colored in. What I was going for was Wonder Woman colors, although if you look at the shield, it looks a little bit like an interstate highway sign, but that's okay. It's Wonder Woman and we're going with it. And I'm going to pop up these sentiment or these digital images onto the center of those sunbursts on my card. I really want it to look like they were coming up out of the paper, and also adding them on with dimension with foam squares. It does help with that effect as well. So I will be layering on my shield to the center with my regular thickness foam squares, and then I'm going to pop up the word mom using some thin foam squares from scrapbook adhesives. These are about half the dimension of my other foam squares that I use. And then I will attach that mom sentiment to the top part of that shield, and then I'm going to add superhero as a banner around my shield. I really like how these 2 cards turned out. They may seem really simple, but because of that printed paper in the background, it really brings a lot to the card. It looks a lot fuller or busier than you would think because of that printed paper background. But of course, I cannot finish a card without some type of shiny, so I am getting out these rhinestones from the kit, and I'm going to use green and blue ones for my dad card, and then I'm going to use red and blue for my mom card. So just trying to bring in those colors from the digital images as well as the cardstock and paper I chose. And here is a close-up look of my first 2 cards. For my next card, I'm going to create a bat signal, but it's going to be a dad signal. And I'm going to die cut my printed paper with the city line on the design. And I'm going to use that kind of POW looking digital image as what's going to be the signal part in the sky. And for some reason, I don't know why I didn't just use the edge of my paper to create the light coming from the bottom. But I'm doing this a little harder than I need to, but I left it in just so you can see what I did. But I'm figuring out how wide I want my paper to be when I trim it to fit behind that yellow POW image, and then figuring out how far down it needs to go off the edge of the paper, and then just taking a ruler and creating a triangle out of that. Again, I could have just used the edge of a piece of paper instead of having to cut 2 lines, but you think of it always afterwards, right? So then I'm just using my paper trimmer to make nice straight lines to cut my light coming up from the city. And then I'm just using an eraser to erase those pencil marks. I did my best to make sure my pencils marks were as light as possible, but yet I could still see when I'm cutting on my paper trimmer. Now I need to figure out where I'm going to trim the paper behind the POW digital image. So I'm just kind of guesstimating where that needs to be and just using my scissors to trim across. And then you can see how it almost makes a perfect 90-degree angle. Again, could have just used the corner of my cardstock. So now I'm going to glue my POW symbol to the top of that light. And then I'm going to use some foam dimensionals to attach it to my background. So you can see here, it looks like the light is coming out from, the city streets. So I'm going to use some foam squares and I'm going to line up the back of my image and I'm going to have it go off the edge. I want it to look like it's coming up from the city and not just from the corner of the paper. And there you can see how it looks. I think it looks really cute. I'm adding one more little foam adhesive here to make sure I have stability on that bottom piece or the bottom part of that cardstock. And once I'm happy with that, I can put the card together. I'm going to use Dad that I colored in with ice gray markers and then use my yellow markers you saw earlier to kind of be the shadow effect of the word Dad. And then using those thin foam squares again, I'm going to put that inside of the POW image. I also wanted to use some of these sentiments from the kit, so I cut around the sentiment, "You're my favorite superhero," and I'm just using my trimmer to make those words smaller, like cut apart the sentiment, mostly just because my trimmer was out, and that way I have it kind of sprawled along the light of my Dad signal. Once I have those placed where I want them, I'm just going to use some adhesive to glue them down. And there the sentiment is done. But of course, we need to add a little bit of shimmer to this card. So I'm going to bring back out those rhinestones and sequins. And I'm going to pick out some clear rhinestones. I found a couple in the mix. And I'm gluing them down so they look kind of like they're lights in the buildings. I wanted them to look a little bit like there's lights still on in the city skyline. And that will finish up the card. So let me get another top folding A2 size card base. Again, using that heavy white cardstock, and I'm just using some wet glue to glue that onto the card base. Here is a final look at this card. For the next card, I thought I would go interactive. So I've already trimmed down my superhero background to be an A2 size. And then I cut a circle frame from that metallic cardstock, as well as a couple circles in acetate. I'm going to be using the star sequence, the very pretty colorful star sequence pack, as my shaker bits. So I lined the circle frame with some 1/8 of an inch double-sided adhesive and I'm adhering one of my acetate circles to the back. And then I'm going to take some foam adhesive and I'm going to line the back of the circle. So this is sandwiching in between the frame and the foam squares is that acetate. Once I have the circle all lined up with the foam adhesive, I'm going to place some of those stars inside of the circle, make sure I don't have any stuck to the edges of my foam adhesive, and then I'm going to add that second acetate circle to sandwich in those star sequins. Once I'm happy with it, I'm going to also take more of that 1/8" adhesive tape and I'm going to line the back of the back adhesive. Again, trying to do my best to hide everything behind that circle metallic frame on the front. I peeled off the release paper and I'm going to center this to my background. Once I have it placed where I want it, I just press down and there we have our shaker card. I'm going to use another of the shield and banners, but this time I'm using the laser printed images and I colored them in with red, blue, and yellow, trying to get a Superman feel, and I just glued those directly to the shaker card. Again, I'm going to do a top folding card and I'm going to go ahead and use that same heavy cardstock, just using some wet glue to adhere this down. Again, another simple card. I guess the shaker does take a little work, but it looks so great because of that printed paper in the background. For my final card, I'm going to bring out that fun comic book feel printed paper, and then I'm going to do some heat foiling with my MINC. I use red foil on the superhero banner, and I use blue foil on the shield, and these are the laser printed images that come in the kit. So they work wonderful with the MINC or with a laminator, depending on what you use to apply your heat foil. I thought I would use that centerpiece of my shaker of that metallic cardstock because we do not waste in this craft room. I trimmed down my comic book colorful background to an A2 size, and then I am adhering my shiny circle to the top center of my card. And I'm using my thin foam squares since I'm going to have multiple layers of dimension. So I use the thin foam squares on that circle and then behind my shield and my banner. I took the two digital images of the little speech bubbles and I just colored them in with solid colors to match the background, and I'm just using them as kind of additional images for the card, just going around the shield. And then I thought, you know what, they need something inside there, so I grabbed another one of those laser printed sentiments that said Happy Mother's Day, and this time I'm just using really large scissors to trim the sentiment. So I'm gonna have Happy Mothers in the purple, and then I will have Day and I Love You in the yellow. I liked that it has a lot of fun on the front of this card. So not only are we wishing Happy Mother's Day and sending our love, we're also telling Mom that she is our superhero. So I'm just using some wet glue to adhere those little sentiments inside of those speech bubbles. And then I thought I would add some of those star sequins just to tie in some more fun and some more colors to this card. It's going to be very busy and shiny, but I really like how it turned out. It feels very comic booky. So once I have those glued down, again, another top folding A2 size card, surprise, surprise, and I am gluing that onto my card base, and that will be my final card. So while I bring out all of those cards again so you can get one final look, thank you so much for hopping along today. I hope that you will find lots of inspiration, and you can check out the link below for all of the information regarding the giveaway and the hop and who to hop onto next. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!